Hello, hello. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today is an unprecedented day, or the follow up of an unprecedented day. Yesterday, President Trump got raided by the FBI. Some people are like, don't call it a raid. They went into his house in Mar-a-Lago to retrieve documents. They say he had classified information that he had left with like 15 boxes when he left the White House. And Trump is saying they broke into his safe and all this other kind of stuff, which Mike Lee asked some interesting questions. Like, why didn't they just seize it and get a warrant for it? Like, he has a thread I'm going to go through that I think he asked some pretty good questions, but it's interesting because there's all these people on the left who are celebrating, who think it's great. And some people were saying things like, well, this is really huge because they had to get a warrant. And it's like, I don't know what Twilight Zone world you've been living in the past couple of years dealing with Trump things, and people didn't do things appropriately to achieve the outcome that they wanted. So I don't know how high this goes yet. I don't know how much participation that Garland had, or I wouldn't hold your breath about something being traceable back to Joe Biden. Because Obama, there's some people who believe the only scandals he had was wearing a tan suit. But he had other scandals, but they didn't all the way always trace back to him. Sometimes you had just people who were ideologues who would do stuff like the IRS stuff that basically was pinned on Lois Lerner. So I wouldn't hold my breath about it getting all the way up to Biden. However, he's really incompetent. I keep saying, like, who shares a bank account with a crackhead? So who knows? But it really could have been rogue local, not rogue, but local, sort of FBI folks deciding to go ahead and do this for a records dispute. But that would be insane. It would be insane, and obviously not acceptable. And I would expect heads to roll, but I would also expect, no, we should hope that heads would roll. But we would be wasting our hopes, I think. So this is a huge day as far as news. Everybody's talking about this. I was on the phone with my sister, one of my sisters, she didn't know about it. She's like, oh, this what you're gonna talk about? I'm like, yeah, everybody's talking about it. She's like, you're not gonna talk about Kim K and Kanye West? I'm like, oh my gosh. I guess some people are talking about that today, but we're gonna be talking about this. And also briefly about Nancy Pelosi. She went on TV and defended China and said that they're rated free. And I'm like, that's not true. Even the source that she cited said they're not free. So we're just gonna put on blast on a little bit, but bulk of our day will be on this story. But before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content that I have on the website. I was working, or am working on a pretty big article regarding this issue. We'll have a lot of just going through history of what we've experienced past couple years in regards to Trump and a bunch of stuff. So make sure that you are following the website. You go and you pop in your email that you guys are following across different social media websites. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, YouTube. All my handles are at Black Tea News. It's black like the color, tea like the drink. The only one that's different is Twitter. That one is at True Black Tea. If you like what I do here at Black Tea News, I do ask that you consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. I understand by inflation, all that stuff. I get you. But I'm sure you all know that nothing in life is free, not the program which I use to stream, nor the what I make to use to run my website. All that's done by me, but through stuff that I obviously have to pay for. So if you do like what I do and you want to see Black Tea News grow, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com. Anything you guys can do to support, I really do appreciate. Otherwise, if you're not able to, if you don't want to, I do appreciate people watching, commenting, adding, liking, following. Make sure you're doing all those things. And I appreciate when you guys share and you get more people to watch Black Tea News. It really does truly help. And it means a lot to me. I also want to thank Brighter Michigan Pack. I'm in their studio today. If I say something today that triggers you, they don't care. I don't care. It does not work like that. They are just a great group of people who like to fight for conservative values, and they do a great job, especially in my state where I live. And I appreciate having the space to do what I do, but there's no one to complain to. I am the boss here. Also, check out different merch that we have at blacktnews.com, like the cool goat hoodies that are super comfortable. So you guys can check that out. Designed them myself. Also, I do have them in t-shirts. You guys can get that. I do also have them in different colors. If you're like, oh, white, I'm going to destroy it, utterly destroy this. Well, there I did make them in different colors because of such comments. So you guys can get these in different colors as well. So you guys can go ahead and check that out at the website. Also have the Denounce White Supremacy, Defeat Joe Biden shirts. Got the I voted for President Trump and all I got was historic peace, deals, border security, etc. Blah, blah, blah on this lousy t-shirt. I'm not the victim you're looking for, and I'm gonna show the crack is whack shirt. Trump 2024, make crack whack again. Which, man, after I wonder how people are feeling after this. Because Trump base, it seems like all they did it was inflame more people to want to support Trump, even though if they may know that maybe there's some candidates who could be better for optics and other stuff in the long run, but people feel impassioned because they're picking on their guy to go ahead and support Trump. Some people are like, maybe this was done to trick people like that. I don't know if the Democrats are playing 4D chess like that, though they have been playing that for some midterm stuff. I don't know. In regards to this, it could just be the targeting because they hate his guts and they saw a way that they could do that, target him, embarrass him, whatever, and they did what they did. I really think it could just be that petty and ridiculous. um Now I guess there's always a possibility that that they do have something that leading to some bigger investigation, but I don't know, as the story is kind of playing out with the details that we have, which aren't a lot, it doesn't seem like that's where it's going, but we'll talk about what we do know. And how it looks. It just looks blatantly political, just blatantly, absolutely political. Well, let's hop to it. You guys know that I like to start with some memes, and I had a meme for the Nancy Pelosi story and a meme for this story. I'm going to start with the news of the day. The warrant didn't sign itself. So, if you're familiar with the Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself phenomenon that people quote, and by the way, Grand Old Memes made this too, or at least they posted it. This is a Jeffrey Epstein linked lawyer who, because so many people were saying, this is huge. This is huge. Trump got raided and someone had to sign a warrant, and they wouldn't have done this without some kind of good evidence or warrant. You had Dave Axelrod who said something like that, and Andrea Mitchell who had said that. But the judge who signed the warrant from the raid on the Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago, Bruce Reinhart, has ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Reinhart resigned from the South Florida U.S. Attorney's Office effective on New Year's Day 2008 and went to work for Epstein's cohorts the following day. And that's from a New York Post article that we will go through. But yeah, everyone's like, the warrant, this means so much. And people are just reminding folks like, did you not remember what happened with the FISA warrants and the, the Carter page? And actually the FBI ex-lawyer who pled guilty to false information that led to the warrant and stuff, he's got his law license back. He got his law license back. So he got in trouble for a little bit, lost it for a little while, and I think had to pay a fine, maybe Michigan or something. But he's like back on, all good, all good after doing something of that magnitude. It's all forgiven. So a lot of these people, crime pays, I suppose, but how can people just forget that when it comes to Trump, some people have done some pretty nutty things, and there's been some rogue activists, maybe not always rogue activists, because there's been some conspiracies tied to this stuff. And you look at the Russia collusion, which the Russia hoax was started by a Clinton person. Like, we know that. It took a long time for people to admit that. People were so inflamed and involved in the controversy. They had people, McCabe and Adam Schiff, who kept going on MSNBC in different places, swearing up and down there was evidence for this Russia collusion stuff. Any day we would see the evidence, and that the walls were closing in on Trump. That was reported all the time, and it just never happened because they never had the goods. But it didn't matter. The truth doesn't matter. What matters is that they wanted to embarrass and damage the reputation of the incoming president and the president who served, for the 4 years, because they could never forgive him for winning. They could never forgive him for winning. So yesterday I came home. My sister had cooked dinner, and we talked about it a little bit. She was, likes to pop in something familiar, it's usually The Office. I've never sat down and really watched The Office, but I've seen a lot of episodes just because they watch it all the time. And she ended up falling asleep while, it was on for a while. And then I'm just sitting there scrolling through Twitter, looking at how people are responding to this, reading different articles and etc. And then when, it played a couple episodes and she woke up from her nap and we started to go upstairs to our bedrooms and stuff. I'm just like, man, this is so insane. This is so insane. It's so unprecedented. It's nothing like this has ever happened before. And she's like, yeah, I wonder what people are gonna say, especially like libertarian leaning people and etc. And I'm just like, this is really concerning. And I I felt like a sense of dread. I don't like to be too, I know I talk about a lot of dark stuff because sometimes our world just is dark. And but we fight through it, we power through it. But there's been a thing or two within the Biden administration that's happened that's really caused a heaviness from time to time. Like the first time I think I really felt a sense of dread was when they were talking about the border issue, and Jen Psaki was like, "Oh, well, they were running different ads in different countries." And they're like, well, "What are you doing to stop it?" And she's like, "Oh, let me just tell you." And then starts talking about how they made cartoons in Spanish. And I'm just like, this is their big plan? And the she had such pride in her incompetence that it just really concerned me. Because I'm like, you guys know how to fix the border. You could just do what like Trump was doing. But they have too much pride for that. Now they've like come around and they're like finishing his wall, which they don't even want to have admit that, but that's going on. But that made me feel dread about their incompetence. There was stuff that Biden said, like in his State of the Union, because I'm like, I know he knows better. He says dumb stuff. He's a gaffe machine, but I know he's not this stupid. They know how to fix the economy. They just don't want to. They're like, just how about you just cut prices? I'm like, bro, it's not that easy that people selling things can just cut prices. Like, you're going to shift all the blame to the producers. So, but yesterday I'm like, this to to do something like this to a former president over some records when he has authority to declassify stuff. I'm like, this is really crazy, really, really crazy. So I, and the thing I guess that upsets people most is really that they see it's clearly one sided, and that one side gets the shaft and one side gets away with it. Like, if we look at Hillary Clinton, she's actually like fundraising off of this stuff right now. She's selling but her emails hats and making all kinds of comments about this stuff. And people are like, this isn't the flex that you think it is, to just be like, hey, you know that you can get away with it. um Simon Rosenberg said, I'm sure coming days reasonable Republicans are going to remind their supporters that they ran an entire presidential election on the gravity of mishandling official documents slash comms, and that minimizing what Trump has done would be epic BS. And Noam Blum said, the problem with this line of thinking is that the problem right wing people have now isn't so much the mishandling of classified information itself, but the fact that she got away with it. So yeah, no one else, Hillary didn't get raided, other people didn't get raided. So people like, oh, but her emails, you didn't get raided though. Like the way that she like was punished was that she lost her election. And that's like the best that we did. Like I was around when people were chanting "lock her up." I never really did that though. I didn't love it. But I remember after the election, I think at a rally that I was at, the crowd started, and there's so many rallies they kind of start to blur together, and there's some you watch on TV, so that's why I said I think one I was at, but people start chanting "lock her up, lock her." He's like, that was good. Fine for the campaign was different now. Like he was ready to let that go. He didn't tell Sessions or anybody to go hunt down Hillary Clinton for her mishandling of the emails. Even unwisely kept Comey around. So and Comey, I don't know if you guys remember that day when he had his big press conference. I was at work working at the Michigan Republican Party, in my office, and they had the press conference, and they just laid out, and we were waiting for him to say something because you couldn't have the actual like DOJ head or AG make a decision because of the tarmac meeting that they had that was inappropriate. So they had to hand over and said, well, we'll do what the FBI says. And Comey lays out this case for how Hillary has mishandled her emails in a criminal way, and then he just decides that it didn't meet criminal standards, and it was so puzzling. It was so puzzling and infuriating for a lot of people. I remember that day. So Hillary Clinton and all these folks that are like, "Oh, you Republicans, you're upset that she mishandled classified information." The thing about that, Trump was the president of the United States. Like he has broad powers over classification, declassification. So grading his stuff over this records thing is really inappropriate. So Trump had a statement that he released. I do have it up. Let me pull up. Give me 1 second. These are dark times for our nation as my beautiful home, Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, is currently under siege, raided, and occupied by a large group of FBI agents. Nothing like this has ever happened to a president of the United States before. After working and cooperating with the relative government agencies, this unannounced raid on my home was not necessary or appropriate. It is a prosecutorial misconduct, the weaponization of the justice system, and attack by the radical left Democrats who desperately don't want me to run for the president in 2024, especially based on recent polls, and who will likewise do anything to stop the Republicans and conservatives in the upcoming midterm elections. Such an assault could only take place in broken third world countries. Sadly, America has now become one of those countries, corrupt at a level not seen before. They even broke into my safe. What is the difference between this and Watergate, where the operatives broke into the Democrat National Committee? Here, in reverse, Democrats broke into the home of the 45th president of the United States. So these look small on my screen, and they're kind of hard to read. So here was a response from the Article 3 Project. Mike Davis, founder of the president of the Article 3 Project, issued the following statement after the FBI raided the former President Donald Trump's home. Attorney General Merrick Garland, FBI Director Chris Wray, and the other appointees in the Biden Justice Department are targeting President Biden's political rival with no legal basis or precedent. There is simply no justification to raid the home of any former president over a records dispute with the National Archives. The President of the United States has the power to declassify any record he wants. So it's pretextual legal nonsense for the Biden Justice Department to pretend President Trump broke any criminal statute by taking 15 boxes of his records with him when he left. Former presidents have government paid staff and offices, secret service protection, security clearances, and secure facilities to store classified records, so there's no legitimate concern that President Trump's records could have gotten into the wrong hands. It's noteworthy that Bush 43 and Trump Justice Departments took no action against President Bill Clinton when he stole the White House furniture. Uh, or when the Secretary of State Hillary Clinton set up a legal home server of our nation's most classified records. House Republicans must impeach Garland and Wray when they reclaim power in January for their unprecedented and destructive politicization of the Justice Department. So again, we don't know how deep and how high right now that it's going or gone, but that's so funny that they mentioned the furniture thing. I do remember people talking about that. I wasn't old enough to like vote or whatever in the Clinton years, first or the Bush years. The first election I was old enough to vote for was Obama and McCain in 2008, and I voted for McCain. Not that I liked either in the end, but you do what you do. You have to. There's one of them was going to be president, and super unfortunately that it was Obama, but is what it is. So people were going around saying that there must be a good reason, and they wouldn't have done this without good reason. And the judge, they kept bringing up the judge. But the judge has had some pretty shady history, if you don't know. So the New York Post posted this today. Judge who approved FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago once linked to Jeffrey Epstein. Zoom in this a little bit so I can read better. The Florida federal magistrate judge who signed off on the search warrant authorizing the FBI raid of former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort left the local U.S. Attorney's Office more than a decade ago to rep employees of the convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, who had received immunity in the long-running sex trafficking investigation of the financier. Reinhart was elevated to magistrate judge in March 2018 after 10 years in private practice. That November, the Miami Herald reported that he had represented several of Epstein's employees, including, by Reinhart's own admission to the outlet, Epstein's pilots, his scheduler, Sarah Kellen, and Nadia Marcinkova, who Epstein once reportedly described as his Yugoslavian sex slave. Kellen and Markovia were among Epstein's lieutenants who were granted immunity as part of the controversial 2007 deal with federal prosecutors that allowed the pervert to plead guilty to state charges rather than federal crimes. Epstein wound up serving 13 months in county jail and was granted work release. According to the outlet, Reinhart resigned from the South Florida U.S. Attorney's Office executive on New Year's Day 2008 and went to work for Epstein's cohorts the following day. Epstein, who was found dead in August 2019 of an apparent suicide, hashtag Epstein didn't kill himself, in the Manhattan Correctional Center while awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges, had hired a stable, high-powered lawyers, including former independent counselor Kenneth Starr. Reinhart was later named in a civil lawsuit that accused him of violating Justice Department policies by switching sides in the middle of the Epstein investigation, suggesting he had used inside information about the probe to build favor with a notorious defendant, the Herald reported in 2018. In a 2011 affidavit, Reinhart denied that he had done anything improper and insisted that since he was not involved in the federal investigation of Epstein, he was not privy to inside information about the case. However, in a 2013 court filing, Reinhart's former colleagues contradicted him, saying that he had learned confidential, non-public information about Epstein's matter. Reinhart noted to the Herald in response that a complaint filed against him by a lawyer for Epstein's victims had been dismissed by the Justice Department, of course. In his 12 years as a federal prosecutor, according to his official biography, Reinhart managed a docket that covered the full spectrum of federal crimes, including narcotics, violent crimes, public corruption, financial frauds, child pornography, and immigration. Reinhart is one of the 3 federal magistrate judges in the West Palm Beach offices of the U.S. District Court for the Southern District Court of Florida, along with William Matthewman and Ryan. Is that Ryan? It's with an O. Ryan McCabe. 2 recent warrant applications were assigned with Reinhart and entered into the court system on Monday. The Miami Herald reported, but those warrants and information about who they targeted remain sealed. Records show another warrant was issued by Reinhart on Friday, but its contents were also sealed. Trump confirmed the media reports of a raid at his Florida resort on Monday evening, etc. Blah blah blah. Yeah, so when people talk about the judge, that doesn't mean that the judge issued a good ruling, that the judge wasn't corrupt, that the judge did his due diligence. You know, so people who think that just because the judge approved it, that everything's on the up and up, I think that's pretty naive. I think that's pretty darn naive. Mike Lee did a thread on Twitter saying, as a lawyer, former federal prosecutor, and current member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, I have a few questions about the FBI's raid on Mar-a-Lago. First, did Attorney General Garland personally sign off on this action? That's something that we desperately need to know very quickly. There's a lot of no comment coming from places right now, but we need to know that. Second, why break into the safe rather than seize it, take it into custody, and then seek a warrant to open it? That's a pretty good question. That's a pretty good question. My sister, when I told my sister about it, she was like, why didn't they just open it up? Why didn't they just ask him? I don't know if Trump would have been like, okay, let's open it up. But I'm like, well, they could have just tried to get a warrant or something to open it up or just take it. Breaking into it is pretty intense. Third, why obtain and execute a search warrant rather than first seeking the items in question, either through an informal process or with a subpoena? Fifth, perhaps there's something here we don't know, something that once known will clarify the reasons for the raid. If there is, FBI needs to bring forward the justification for this unprecedented action as soon as possible. But if there isn't, we've got problems at the FBI. 6, classification authority belongs to the President of the United States and not the bureaucrats at the National Archives. Again, that's a really good point. 7th, if this turns out to be the product of growing political weaponization of the federal law enforcement agencies, shouldn't this incident cause all Americans to be even more outraged by the Democrats' plan to hire an additional 87,000 agents? Yeah. Like how he snuck that in there, or shoehorned it rather. But people are concerned about all the IRS agents that they have decided to hire, especially since this is giving people vibes of how people were targeted back in the Obama days and by the IRS. So I showed a graph yesterday. I don't still have it up in my files ready to go, of where people are most likely to be audited, and a lot of it is southern states, and there's specks and stuff around California, New York, but it wasn't a lot, because the map was colored and there were specks of red and stuff, but it wasn't super deep red in different parts that where it definitely could have been. So I think the audits will go after people who are in the middle class. They've been dying to get to Venmo accounts and Cash App, stuff like that, monitor that more closely. So I mean, when I see my Cash App and stuff here's your statements this month, I'm like, that's kind of new, right? Because I think they're prepping for when they really you're going to look at everyone's stuff. So yeah, I think everyday people should be concerned, and audits are expensive. And if you think they're just going to go after the big guys of the world, no, the big guys of the world have people that they pay obscene amount of money to do their taxes correctly, and also figure out how to pay the least amount possible. And then they also do what they can to lobby to get around the system. It's everyday people who suffer when they keep expanding the size of government. Okay, 8th, how is this aggressive action defensible in light of the FBI DOJ treatment of Hillary Clinton, who was never subjected to a raid like this, even though she, one, mishandled classified material and destroyed evidence? I remember watching CNN, because we'd never have Fox or a different network on my, well, I guess it was mostly CNN. We didn't put on MSNBC, but we would never put it on Fox when I worked with the Michigan Republican Party, because we're the person I worked with, Ross, who was the digital director, he'd always say, we know what our side's going to basically say. We need to know what they're saying on the other side. So we would have CNN, and that was one of the wisest things he did. And I'd be like, oh gosh, we got to clip that. Be like send an email, like, I need you to clip this, blah, blah, blah. And that we get it emailed or whatever. And then I'd make a hit piece or something. So, watching CNN, and it was Brooke, who's no longer with CNN, I don't believe. But they were talking about the different things that Clinton's team was doing, and they were talking about smashing phones with hammers. She's like, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Fact check that on the fly. She's like, hammers? They're using hammers? And they're just like, yeah, they were smashing phones with hammers. And she was just like amazed. And I think a lot of people, they didn't want Trump to win, obviously, but they knew like that the Hillary email stuff wasn't good, that it looked really bad. They tried to pretend otherwise sometimes because they did want her to win, but they knew like the optics weren't great. And again, Trump was the president. He can't had the power to declassify, not classify. I don't even know if they know for sure whether he did technically declassify stuff or not for the stuff, different stuff that they took. But it doesn't warrant a raid. And nothing happened to Hillary Clinton other than her losing the presidential election. That's not the same as them trying to put someone away. Now, granted, people were chanting lock her up, but I doubt Hillary Clinton thought that she was really going to be locked up at any point in time. It's not how it works on their side. Ninth, what should we make of the fact that this is occurring while FBI and DOJ have taken no discernible action regarding, for example, flagrant violations of the law by Hunter Biden or pro abortion extremists threatening Supreme Court justices at their homes? Priorities are kind of weird. Priorities are kind of weird. Now, if there were some kind of big importance, the files that Trump had, which he hasn't been present for like a while now, going on the 2 years. So it's kind of late to do something this extreme. If they needed the files that badly, uh, or if they were that important, I mean, we'll wait to see a little bit. But Hunter Biden's laptop has had some pretty damning things in it, and they knew that for a while, but they tried to ignore it. And some of those things, there are like investigations going into Hunter, but he's obviously tied to his dad in a way that Biden lied about, which didn't his lie never made sense to say, oh, I wasn't in Tango. I know anything about my son's business dealings. Like, you're his dad. That doesn't make any sense. Like, even when he was saying that, CNN and people were like, wouldn't you at least want to talk about it to make sure you weren't having some kind of error as far as how they're interacting, so there isn't a look of impropriety? So his lie never made sense, but there's definitely evidence to show that they lied as far as their entanglement. But them not doing anything about the intimidation with the Supreme Court justices and people going to their homes when that was like a federal law, that was messed up. And lastly, oh no, gosh, there's more. 10th, why should we assume that the FBI is above targeting Republicans when it creates documents like this one, which encourages its agents to be suspicious of people who display the Betsy Ross flag or the Don't Tread on Me Gadsden flag? I heard about this, but I didn't look too much into it. I can't pull it up for you guys right now, but yeah, that's militia violent extremism form. That is pretty messed up. There are whistleblowers who are concerned and reached out to Republicans because they think that the FBI, the Justice Department, whatever, is really focusing on domestic terrorism and inflating the alarm about it. And the reason for that would obviously be so they could obtain more power. For what reason? I would think a little bit is probably political targeting, but who knows? 12th, shouldn't all Americans be suspicious of the I don't, was there an 11th? Maybe one got deleted or he can't count. 12, shouldn't all Americans be suspicious of the FBI based on its use of warrantless backdoor searches under Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, about which Christopher Wray expressed very little concern when I questioned him last week's hearing? So there were some alarming things when they were talking to the FBI, not too long ago. In FYI, the FBI plotted to kidnap my governor in Michigan. We talked about that a bit as it happened, and how when the courts actually ruled that some of them were like entrapped by the government. But like even Daily Beast, which is no out conservative outlet, it really has become like a mainstream story, that it really would not have happened if the FBI weren't involved. Like they plotted to make it happen. So um they're not always doing good things with people. And I just think it's really important to find out how far this has gone. A lot of people have spoken up about this. Andrew Yang has said it looks political. It really, really looks political. Some people are upset that he pointed out the obvious, but it definitely looks political. I don't have his statement, but he was trending on Twitter because he made it. We have Chris Cuomo. I'm sorry, Andrew Cuomo, who said this: DOJ must immediately explain the reason for its raid, and it must be more than a search for consequential archives, or it will be viewed as a political tactic and undermine any future credible investigation and legitimacy of January 6 investigations. So people are wigging out because they're agreeing with him. And but people on the left are also upset that he spoke out. But he's just said the obvious. Like there's some thresholds you should not cross. And as someone who's actually had some dirty stuff in his past, he's probably like, I don't want you to use that on me, bruh. I don't. And he probably thought he was a little too close to the sun or too high to get burned like that, I guess. But they eventually burned him. They eventually burned him for sure. Mike Pence spoke out. I share deep concern of the millions of Americans over the unprecedented search of the personal residence of President Trump. No former president of the United States has ever been subject to a raid of their personal residence in American history. After years where FBI agents were found to be acting on political motivation during our administration, the appearance of continued partisanship by the Justice Department must be addressed. Yesterday's actions undermines public confidence in our system, and our Justice and Attorney General Garland must give a full accounting to the American people as to why this action was taken, and he must do so immediately. I agree with that. Ron DeSantis did release a statement last night. The raid of talking about Mar-a-Lago, is another escalation of the weaponization of federal agencies against the regime's political opponents. While people like Hunter Biden get treated with kid gloves, now the regime is getting another 87K IRS agents to wield against its adversaries, Banana Republic. It is really crazy. Now, if this does go, if this was like a targeting, and they can't just point to, hey, this is a rogue person who did a crazy thing, that would be really, really insane. Because do you guys remember why Trump was impeached the first time? Do you remember? There was two articles. There's two. One was, I'm going to tell you the second one because it was the dumber one. One was the obstruction of Congress, and it's like you're like co-equal branches. You can't just be mad because someone won't do exactly what you want them to and then impeach them for. You can impeach them for any reason. You could have been like, we found out that Trump drinks too much Diet Coke, and of course I've been stupid, but the Congress can impeach for any reason. This was dumb. But the other reason in the Article 1 was abuse of power. And it was abuse of power because Trump had the not so perfect phone call. He called it the perfect phone call, but we know that wasn't so perfect. And they were talking about, well, they were withholding aid for a little bit because they did want Ukraine, allegedly wanted Ukraine to look into some corruption and they had in their country. She still have corruption in their country, but everyone's like Ukraine flags because of what's going on with Russia. Russia is an aggressor. I just wanted to put that out. But country's not perfect. And so I'm sure Trump was watching this Biden video one day. Let's just play the Biden video before we go deeper into it. You guys remember this, I'm sure.
Well, I was not but it just happened to be that was the assignment I got. I got all the good ones, so I got Ukraine, and I remember going over convincing our team, or others, to convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired.
So the prosecutor that was fired was looking into the company Burisma, which his son, Hunter Biden, sat on that board. So people were asking questions about this. And so President Trump, he had a phone call. Again, it wasn't a perfect phone call, as Trump was saying. But let me read a little bit of that phone call. So this is the phone call that he had with the Ukrainian president, Zelensky, in 2019. And he was talking about, hey, you can get Rudy Giuliani. He's a good guy. He knows some stuff. He's asking questions, blah, blah, blah. I want you to just talk to him. I want you to talk to him. He said there's a lot to talk about with Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that. So whatever you can do with the attorney general would be great. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution. So if you could look into it, it sounds horrible to me. And that's what Trump had mentioned about it. And you heard the video, the same video that was circulating around that I'm sure Trump probably saw, and was like, that's interesting. And I mentioned that. And so the people try to say, well, they withheld funds to coerce them into looking into Biden. At the time when they had that phone call, though, they couldn't have known about the funds. Zelensky was like, no, I didn't feel pressure, blah, blah, blah. That's what he said. Etc. But they hinged a lot, everything around this phone call. And so they were upset because they said that Trump was targeting a political opponent. They said, using the powers of his high office, President Trump solicited the interference of foreign government, Ukraine, in the 2020 United States presidential election. He did so through a scheme, of course, of conduct that included soliciting the government of Ukraine publicly to announce investigations that would benefit his re-election, harm the election prospects of a political opponent, and influence the 2020 United States presidential election to his advantage. President Trump also sought to pressure the government of Ukraine to take these steps by conditioning official United States government acts of significant value to Ukraine on its public announcement of the investigations. President Trump engaged in the scheme, of course, of conduct for corrupt purposes in pursuit of personal political benefit. In doing so, President Trump used the power of the presidency in a manner that compromised the national security of the United States and undermined the integrity of the United States democratic process. He thus ignored and injured the interests of the nation. So that's what they impeached him for. And even if he withheld funds, which he did for a little bit, there was like a rule. I don't remember it off the top of my head. It was a while ago. We were talking impeachment stuff. The first one anyway. But there was the law that he had broken as far as not trying to appropriate funds that Congress had already like appropriated, there was already like a remedy within that law. So it didn't make sense to think that that they should be able to impeach him over that. So there's that. And again, they wouldn't have known on that phone call that those funds were even blocked, so that wasn't even really on the table. And we'll talk about quid pro quo. You saw the video where Biden was like, if you guys don't do what I want, fire the prosecutor who happens to be like looking into this company that my son is on the board on. We're going to make sure that you don't get this cash. So, this is all very amazing. So again, we don't know how high this is going, but if this is getting to the territory where like, hey, you're trying to push out political rivals to who Trump is, I'd be very surprised if he wasn't running this whole time. I'm pretty 100% sure that he plans to be the nominee in 2024. He's still the front runner. DeSantis is like creeping up. Trump's probably going to get a bump after this. I'm not going to lie. So he's the front runner. So by the own logic of like the Democrats and how they attacked and decided to impeach Trump, this would be very bad if Biden had his hands on this in any sort of way. But what's also interesting is that when Trump was the nominee, he was being spied on by the former administration. They were looking into stuff, surveilling him, whatever, the Trump campaign. And when they were like in transition period and you had like Michael Flynn doing different stuff, you had Joe Biden who actually brought up the Logan Act, using it against him. So, and they weren't not aware of Hillary Clinton being behind like the Russia hoax and her people like pushing that around, and it became a huge thing, obviously. So you had the former administration who is doing things to surveil or sabotage the incoming administration to later reinstall itself. Because of course Biden was the vice president then. He's now the president. And then he brought in a bunch of different people who were also in the Obama administration. Jen Psaki didn't pop out of nowhere. So it's all very messed up. All very looks well, there's been corruption for a while. We don't know at how bad this particular thing is. Now we're still waiting for some more information. But it's unprecedented. It's to do this to a former president in his home over a records dispute when he gets to decide what's classified, not classified. Which, by the way, Trump noted in his statement that he was cooperating with them. I don't know how well he was cooperating them. Let's just put that on the table. If I had to imagine, had to guess, it probably wasn't in the smoothest sort of manner. I'm assuming. Just sometimes man can be a little prickly. But they did give them some documents, and that, according to Political Playbook, how they were reporting, they said they actually gave them some probable cause, which I think they were repeating from the Miami Herald, because some of it was like classified that they got from him voluntarily, I guess. And so then they're like, oh, well, there's some classified stuff. We have more reason to go in and just take the crap that we want. It was just it was not appropriate. If there's like some monumental thing that he had in his safe or something that they knew, that would be different. But we have to look at the warrants that the Epstein tied judge gave or signed, and we need to know how far up the ladder this went before this was executed. But if it was just like this local office being like, yeah, we should absolutely just raid Mar-a-Lago, that'd be kick butt, man. Their heads need to roll too. But there needs to be some kind of accountability, because our institutions are not trusted, and our faith in them has been utterly just violated over the past couple of years. I was listening to Ben Shapiro earlier, and he's supposed to be on vacation. He's over in Israel, and he's like, he had to weigh in, obviously, and he mentioned how his faith has waned in those institutions. Because I remember his commentary when like the Russia Gate and all that stuff started, and Russia collusion, and he had that, he was like, let's just play it out and everything will be fine, if and Trump was proven not to be involved in the way that they claimed or were hoping anyway, and people were lying, claiming that they had stuff and it would lead to like all indictments, etc. But um, they did a lot of shady stuff to drag it out to basically hinder his name and hinder his legacy and hinder his presidency and how effective of a leader that he could be, which is damaging to the country. And that dinged his faith in our system. We shouldn't have we should be able to trust in some things. But as Andrew Yang said, this looks so political. This looks so political. So um as I said earlier, this was concerning. It still is concerning. Um I some people are really scorched earth right now. I think we should really press on this. I don't know if I'm quite scorched earth. We need a little bit more information, but this is messed up. This is messed up. I'm going to move on. I'm sure we'll be talking about this tomorrow. I'm sure we'll be talking about this more tomorrow. I want to play this clip of a Nancy Pelosi defending China. Talking about how free they are.
We still support the one China policy. We go there to acknowledge the status quo is what our policy is. There was nothing disruptive about that. It was only about saying China is one of the freest societies in the world. Don't take it from me. That's from Freedom House.
Let's
it's
talk
a strong
a little bit.
democracy, courageous people, and it's just, I don't know why it is, except there's some commercial interests who would like to diminish the relationship.
Why wasn't she challenged at all? But the report, she's like, yeah. I'm like, what do you mean they're free like that? Now, she quoted Freedom House. Let's look at what Freedom House has to say about China. At the top here, this is like a little further down on the page. I had to clip it out, but in case you can't see that, they rate China not free. Now, they rated not free. So when you pull up China in the Freedom House, it says China's authoritarian regime has become increasingly repressive in the recent years. The ruling Chinese Communist Party continues to tighten control over all aspects of life and governance, including the state, bureaucracy, the media, online search, religious practice, universities, businesses, and civil societies associations, and has undermined an earlier series of modest rule of law reforms. The CCP leader and the state president Xi Jinping has consolidated personal power to a degree not seen in China for decades. Human rights activists and lawyers continue to speak out at great personal cost. So yeah, I don't know whose stash she's been smoking. Maybe some of her husband's good wine or whatever he was drinking that night that he got into that DUI situation. I don't even know why say all that stuff. It's so provably false. So I guess they're not standing with Taiwan. I mean, I think she went over there for stock reasons and stuff. I don't think she went over obviously for any sort of solidarity with Taiwan, and I mean she just threw them under the bus. But yeah, it's China being free, so free, rated free, not true. Absolutely bonkers. This was a meme, and I think some Prison Mitch account made this. So that they took that obviously from that when they are bowing and have the I don't know, African cloths around their necks with the other Democrats. Kudos for this meme. Kudos to this meme for sure. So last thing I want to talk about, just I don't know, brighten up the mood. Top Gun Maverick just passed Titanic at the all-time domestic box office. So a lot of people have really liked this film. I saw a lot of people who were on my feed talking about it who are political friends who I don't ever see them really talk about films. But they just talked about the how great the piloting scenes were, and just how it was so unwoke, and there's so many movies that want to shove in agendas and stuff. I've heard people like Jack Posobiec, I think, said that the problem with Top Gun Maverick is that it exists in the United States that no longer exists, and that's pretty sad to think about. But um, Top Gun Maverick making so much money and being such a success, it says a couple things: that people are still willing to go to the movies. One, so people who have films that just kind of bomb, um, maybe streaming has something to do with that, but people are willing to still go to the show to appreciate stuff. Um, you don't have to only make superhero movies, which people are starting to run into superhero fatigue. Like Thor Love and Thunder didn't do as, I mean, it made a lot of money, but it costs a lot of money to make. So it's not doing what they wanted it to do. And there's gonna be some other things that didn't do the, like Eternals didn't do as well, but a lot of that is just kind of how bad the stuff is. Nostalgia bait works because obviously this is a sequel to Top Gun, and Spider-Man No Way Home made a lot of money. People wanted to see it because they relied and leaned on that nostalgia bait of the other two Spider-Mans from the franchises coming in. But people are just really ready to see some stuff that's they know is just going to be a film that they can go and enjoy and not feel lectured about, and that they can feel optimistic about. You go and you see some films and there's great characters. There's not like really annoying feminist messages or annoying people, and if you complain about an annoying woman, that you don't have to be berated and they're like, oh, it's just because you're sexist. Like, no, you just wrote a trash character, bro. Like, people are really sick of not being able to just be entertained. So this was a movie that a lot of people felt just kind of got back to normal. And so this is from CNBC. Top Gun Maverick is still breaking records, passing both Jurassic World and Titanic this week to become the seventh highest grossing film of all time of the domestic box office. This equal to the 1986 hit. Already Tom Cruise's highest grossing film and first ever billion-dollar movie. He's been making movies for a long time, man. Has earned 662.5 million in the US since its May 27 release. Its global box office haul stands at 1.35 billion, good enough to make the number 13 highest grossing movie ever made. Maverick is doing something that only a handful of films have ever done in the modern blockbuster era. Jeff Back, a media analyst at Exhibitor Relations, previously told CNBC, make it. Here's where Maverick stands at the all-time domestic box office as of August 8th, according to the data from Box Office Mojo. So at number 10 is Avengers, that has had 623.3 million, which was right at the time. Jurassic World, more nostalgia, a 653.4 million. Titanic, 659.3 million. And that number 7, now you have Top Gun Maverick at 662.5 million. Avengers Infinity War, 678.8 million. And then Black Panther, 700 million, 700.4 million. Avatar, 760.5 million. That movie was a huge phenomenon. I've still never seen it, and don't want to really. Spider-Man No Way Home got 804.7 million, and again, they had like all three Spider-Mans in it, so they really played on this nostalgia bait. And people said it was really good. I didn't watch it. I'm not going to. Avengers Endgame, 858.3 million, which still don't like that film. And Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, 936.6 million. And I'm not surprised about Star Wars being number one. People were excited to see that franchise, but gosh, Disney did awful with that. Disney did a crap job. Wish they had like comics or books or whatever that they could have taken some really good stories with, and they just went in this really bad direction. My sister noted that they ruined Thor. That's what they get for not doing as well as they wanted it to. But yeah, I think people are starting to see that people have some fatigue with Disney, and they're also really sick of the woke stuff that they're pushing in it too. So I don't I don't I don't know if we're going to see Marvel movies make as much as what they made here before. I think people are going to try. We'll see how the Wakanda Forever goes, because people are very they came out and coalesced around Black Panther for reasons I think they're kind of obvious. I did enjoy Black Panther though. It was a fun film. It was like mid-tier in quality as far as Marvel, as far as writing and story, etc. It was mid-tier, let's be honest. It wasn't like the best one ever. Though Rolling Stone did a list and put it as number one for obvious reasons. But with Chadwick passing away and them trying, I don't know, I guess to say kind of goodbye film, and then I think people are going to go out and support it. However, there is like a movement of people on TikTok telling white people and telling other white people, and then some black people telling white people to like not go see it opening weekend so black people can go enjoy it without white people like ruining it, I guess. And some people have spoken out against that and been like, that's so stupid. People depend on everyone going to go see the film on opening weekend to get that big push with the film's success. And it would be stupid if you love this film and want it to do well to not go see it. So the woke people are sabotaging themselves, but it might do well, it might not do well. But I won't be saying it. I won't be saying it. Anyway, I my sister pointed out that they're gonna make a lot of money. I don't know if they're gonna crack like top 10 domestic like this. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Things were a lot different back in the, when did this come out? 2018. We live in a different time now. Anyway, that is a show for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. What I do, there are costs associated with the website, streaming, travel, all that good stuff. So if you would like to support and you can support, please consider going to the website and doing so, whether it's $25, $50, whatever you can do. I really appreciate it, even if it's just like $10. It adds up, and it really does go a long way. And I do appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching, for commenting, for tagging different people, for liking Black Tea News across different social media platforms. All my handles are at Black Tea News, black like the color, tea like the drink. The only one that's different is Twitter. That one is at True Black Tea. And make sure, even though you watch on Facebook, that you're still subscribing on YouTube and different places, because that does also really help. Make sure you guys check out different merchandise that I have on the website as well. I'm about 30,000 words in. I was I didn't get to write much today or last night after this news broke, but I'm pressing along with the book, and I'm gonna keep you guys updated, and we'll have a fun release. Thank you guys, and I'll see